Hey everyone, Brooke here, and I'm back with a new video update for version 058.0 of Terminus. That just came out today, and so there's a bunch of cool things I'd like to share with you that might be of interest. First off, I want to talk about documentation, especially around configuration information for HTTP requests. And that's in the configuration documentation here. And you'll notice that there's 3 new environment variables here. There's one for connect, read, and write. And you'll note that the default is 2 seconds for connect, 10 for read, and 10 for write. Now those are the defaults, but the cool thing is now that these environment variables are here, that means you can tweak those values and make them higher in case your connection for making HTTP requests is too slow. The reason this was brought up is there's been a couple issues in the community where people are running Terminus on the Raspberry Pi or deployed to the cloud, and there's connectivity issues that are a little slower than the defaults. So now you can change those defaults so you don't have those connection issues and you don't have errors rendering images on your devices and so forth. So this is all here now for you. If it's not affecting you, you can ignore this entirely, but if you do need it, it is now there for you. Moving on from there, I want to talk about local date time information. So I'm going to pick on one of my device records here, and I'm going to pick on my clock device. And the best way to show you is just visually in the UI here, where you'll notice that the date time information here is in a 12-hour clock, and then it's got AM, PM information, and it's relative to my location. In the past, all this information used to be in UTC time on a 24-hour clock. And so while useful, and it was still relative, still useful for knowing when records were created, updated, synchronized, and so forth, it was a little hard to read because it was always in UTC. So now it's local to your location. And this is doesn't just apply to devices. I'm just using my clock device as an example, but it's for all records within the system. All of them have this relative date time information. In addition, it also applies to the API responses. So if you're using the Terminus API, all that date time information will come back in local time as well. While we're actually talking about devices, the other thing I want to talk about is you can no longer proxy a device. In the past, you used to have a little checkbox here in addition to firmware update where it said proxy, and you could check that checkbox, you could turn it on and off. And what proxying did is it allowed you to proxy a screen that was generated on our core server. That screen would then be synchronized locally to your device of the same friendly ID and then rendered on your device. But the problem with that is that screen information was always generated on the core server, not on Terminus. And so we've removed that capability because it was a bit of a load on our server, and so that everything can be done locally through Terminus. And you've got many avenues in which to do that. You can build screens, you can upload screens, you can use the Screens API, you can use extensions to build screens, you can pull in other extensions from the gallery, import those, and then have those build screens for your device. And so the emphasis really now is to let Terminus do all the screen rendering for you and take off some of the load on our core server. So while I'm talking about extensions here, the other cool feature that I'm really excited to share with you is the import and export ability of extensions. So to show this off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone my Budo extension, and I'm going to create here a Budo quotes clone extension. And then you'll notice that there's this little download arrow for all extensions now. And if you click on it, it'll create a zip file of that extension. And that allows you to export it so you can share with others within that are running Terminus. You can send it to me for debugging purposes if you run into issues, helps with bug reports and so forth. But the main thing is just being able to archive your extensions or share them with others. Now, that got downloaded to my downloads folder. And you'll notice that it has an extension dash prefix and then the name of your extension. If I double click on this, it'll expand and there's 2 files in here. Actually, I'm going to switch over to my code editor and show you what those look like here. So you'll see that I'm looking at the expanded version of that zip file. And the configuration YAML is just basically the metadata about the extension. That's what's needed when you do the import so that it can re-render your extension properly. And then the liquid template associated with your extension, if there is one, that'll be placed here as well. And so with that information, you can actually tweak this, rezip it if you want to, however you want to do. But the nice thing is now that you know how that works, Now I can actually delete this clone. And then I'll go over here and you'll notice this new icon here, which is, selecting too much here. This little icon here, the upload, that is to do an import of an extension. So now that that zip exists, I can go ahead and select it. And then immediately when I select it, Terminus will recognize it. And then in this case, you'll see that it got imported and you'll see that my clone is back again. And if I look at the clone, I can do a preview here. I can see that it's rendering. It's brought in all the exchanges that were associated with it. There's the template. And then it's also already made the HTTP GET request because it's a polling extension to pull in the source information in which to render in the liquid template. So really nice. One thing to note though is when you do an import, it does not save, the export of your extension does not save your model or device information because that could be different for different Terminus systems. So you'll need to select what device you want it to render on. Like in this case, I can just select the 2-bit OG device. But if you had other devices you were rendering to, you could select all those here like you normally would do, and then you can just save your extension and you're good to go. It'll get updated and then you can render that. You might also, any schedule information will be saved when you do the export, so you shouldn't have to tweak this, but you can, when you do the import, you can change the values if you want to. Again, everything's totally editable, so up to you. But that's import and export. And then the last thing to wrap up with is I'm also excited to share version release information. So what I mean by that is if we go back to the project, you'll notice that there's a little link here, and this actually renders to another product page for Terminus itself. And I'm going to show you this in my other browser. There's a weird problem going on with my Vivaldi browser, so I'm just going to show you this in Firefox for the purposes of today. But you'll see that there's a page here for Terminus, and again, that's all linked to from the source code from the GitHub repository. And you'll see that it's just rendering the page view, everything that you see on GitHub. It's just the same information being rendered here. But that isn't the terribly exciting thing I want to share with you. The big thing is being able to get version information. So if you, sorry, I probably went a little quick there, but you'll see that the product page always shows the latest version of Terminus, the current version. If you click on that, you can actually look at the release notes for that version. So there's a lot of cool information that you can get here, such as you can expand all these commits that went into the release. You can look at the details. You can see the message, the reasoning why the commit was made. You know, the what is always the commit, but the why is always, you know, what is the thought process that went behind this change. You can see who the author is, if there was any collaborators. You can see the git commit signature. You can see that my git commits are always signed and have a proper signature with them. Same thing for the tag. It also has a good PGB signature as well. Also, if you collapse these down, so like if I collapse these all back down, you can click on the author and see the author who did the work. You can look at the files that are in that particular change. So that brings you back into the source code here. You can look at the issue if there was an issue associated with it. In this case, that commit was related to this issue created by this user in the community. And then let me go back here. And then also, if there's any code review information, in this case, there isn't a code review associated with this, so it just brings you to all of them. But all that information is there. The other nice thing is there's some nice keyboard shortcuts so you can get through this information quickly. So for instance, if I hit V, I can go to all versions and then be able to select any version. So like if I want to jump back to Terminus 050 for some reason, I can see the version release notes there. I can also use the back arrow key to go down to version 0.4, 0.3. I can use the forward arrow key to go back up in versions. And so you just got a really nice way in which to go back through previous releases, future releases, current release, you name it. The other last thing I also want to share is that if you go back to the product page for Terminus here, there's also a little icon here for syndicated feeds. So not only is it nice for you to be able to look at the version information, but you can also get a syndicated feed of this information so that in your own feed reader, every time there's a new release of Terminus, you'll be immediately notified and have those release notes to look at. So let me show you how that works too. So if I go back to here and I click on this, You'll notice that it's just XML because syndicated feeds are always in an XML format. But if you take that URL and you copy it and you paste it into your feed reader, so I'm going to use NetNewsWire, which is free for macOS. And you'll notice that I have the Terminus feed syndicated locally into my feed reader. And so I'm able to see all the information here too for the past versions. And again, these are clickable as well. You can look into them. You can see the thought process, the notes that went into it, who the author is, any kind of details. All the details that you saw in the HTML version is here in the feed version as well. Granted, syndicated feeds don't have quite the richness of the HTML layout, but at least you have this information so that you can get this in your feed reader, and you'll just see that when a new release comes out, you'll get to see who the authors were behind the work. In this case, it was me and Nate who were doing the work in this release. You get all the stat information that you had before with the HTML version. And again, you can click through all the details of the version release to see what the changes are. So that's a syndicated feed. Here's the website again. And again, this is all, the product page. And then this is all linked to from here. So all that information is there for you. I hope you like this release. I hope you like the new features that are being rolled out. And the fact that you've got more information at your fingertips to kind of stay tuned in as to what is always happening in the various changes of the various releases of Terminus. So anyway, enjoy, and I'll see you in the next version.